Hi, everyone, and welcome. And thank you for coming out to the online virtual book launch and reading for James Cole and the Somatoliths. We are thrilled to have you here. And my name is Karen. I'm the editor in chief at Nash and Teeth Publishing. And I am thrilled, honestly, that James, first off, submitted this great work and that he was like, yes, you can publish it. It was like, y'all just don't understand when we get manuscripts in and we're reading, you just know when something is really, really good. And we were just excited to be able to bring this book out into the world. And it is unlike almost everything out there today. I mean, it is introspective, but it's I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time putting words into it. It's really so good. And it just talks about, the body, but more than that, about basically how we're relating to those things that are happening with us. And so I'm just thrilled to have it. And I know that James has invited a friend today to help kick us off and get us in the mood for some poetry today. Andy Weaver is a queer writer living in Charlottesville, Virginia. They earned a BA in creative writing from Young Harris College in Georgia, and their work can be found in Rock and Sling, The Rumen, New Words Press, and elsewhere. When they aren't writing, they are studying to become an archivist and naming every groundhog in their yard Horace. Thank you, Andy, for coming.
Thank you so much for inviting me, both James and Karen. I'm really honored to be invited to read at the kickoff of this event. I'm really excited. My copy of the book is on its way, and I have just been opening the tracking and closing it. James is one of my favorite collaborators. I met him here in Charlottesville, and we miss him very dearly. And so I'm very excited to be able to read and honored. So yeah, I don't like to give my work too much preamble. So I will dive right in. Um, my first poem is called "At the End of the World, I Drink the Candle." At the end of the world, I drink the candle, feel the hot wax pouring down, sealing me up like the stamp of a king. My throat is a pulsing automaton. My throat is a water wheel pushing back small and searing tides. I did not think I still had a throat. My throat is burning. Still, I do not stop. I drink the candle, and I know it tastes nothing like it smelled. I know the candle will not end. I know there is enough to fill me forever. My ears puff and crack like glass, forgotten on a burner. I did not think I still had ears. The heat shoots like campfire sparks behind my nose and eyes. I did not think I still had a nose or eyes. In my chest, the flames carve a cavity I couldn't feel before. I did not think I still had any of these things. Thank you, thank you. My second poem is called Self-Portrait and Alienations. And this is actually can be found in the room in which I believe James is involved with. I'm not sure, James, if you're still an editor there. Awesome, yes. So great appreciations to James for publishing this one. Self-Portrait and Alienations. The team formations down the hill, the sandstone chapel you don't enter, the pen still in the cup, the table you don't set, the table you set, don't sit, the men you couldn't be, your notebook full of other people's names, your muffled lungs, your shin splints, your inner ear, your stiff shoulder, sore but not sprained. To read well, you must write, not well, but something must break the shell to get the yolk. The roots drown unless you pull them up, air them out, untangle the same thing, said a million times until the poem gets better. Your head is a house on fire, and you're the beams. The sirens come to put you out. Go out, go out, go out. Thank you. I'll read two more. My third poem is probably the most political poem in the collection, although I would argue that all poems about the body are political in some way. Um, but this one is called In Handcuffs, You Saw Something That Isn't Mine to Write. What is poetry which does not save nations or people? Czeslaw Miłosz, Dedication, Warsaw, 1945. When I go to write, I only see the bodies in what were tents, the bodies in aid trucks, the bodies in what were roads, but now is bombed out desert. I only hear the lies we all hear about mistakes and investigations and my boss's boss's boss, who doesn't believe in divestment as a strategy, and what they did to us on that grass and in that jail and in the courtroom and then back in our offices. I see swollen bruises on my hands from zip ties, and the smell of capsaicin carves a home in my nostrils. Weeks after, I only see my partner on the ground buried under many white men with guns and shields and knees. I see the footage and I cannot write for my own heart poems about the grief of the parents who hold pieces of what used to be their children. Thank you. And this will be my last one. Since we are at a book launch, this is a book-themed poem. So here we go. My body is not a book, because I like books and I hate my body. You say you have moments like lightning when you were a child in a hurricane, or last night when you wanted to tell her you love her. I have always been afraid of storms, running down hallways in the night until I realized I was awake. Forgive me for the anecdote. I need something to hold the aboutness my body can't. I hope you press new grooves into me that people read, that hold ink and aboutnesses like rivers hold stones. Peel back my leather corners dry with red rot and see what my marbling used to look like, could look like. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much. Great. All right, if you have any links, make sure you drop them in the chat so people can find you and find your work. And then now we're going to let James take over in a little bit. I'm going to read the bio. James Cole is a poet, author, filmmaker, and neuroscientist based out of Morgantown, West Virginia. Born in Roanoke, Virginia, James went on to study creative writing, medieval Renaissance studies, and neuroscience at the College of William and Mary. In 2023, James earned his PhD in neuroscience from the University of Virginia, where he studied neural development and retinal degenerative diseases. He currently teaches neuroscience and psychology as an assistant professor at West Virginia University. James' writings have appeared in numerous publications over the years, and there's a whole big long list of publications, a long list. So be sure you head over to his website, jamescoleauthor.com, to get all that info. Beyond the literary sphere, James is a fan of all things ancient and arcane. He is a practitioner of historic European martial arts and a former sport fencer. James enjoys board games, trivia, and cooking. And now we're going to give it to James.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate everything that you the folks at Gnashing Teeth Publishing, obviously allowing me to publish through their label and doing such a fantastic job putting this collection together, the cover, all these wonderful aspects. As anyone in the writing world can tell you, such projects involve a lot of feedback and a lot of input from many, many, many people. So there's a lot of folks here today who have made this possible. And I will periodically be kind of thanking and acknowledging folks as I go along. I don't want to overwhelm you all as I go. But also, I just wanted to plug, since we mentioned my website, Dave Sorensen, who just joined, excellent webmaster and website creator extraordinaire, did a fantastic job with that. So if you do want to check out some of these other publications, you can go and check out my website. So yeah, I thought I'd go ahead and kind of go semi chronologically through the collection, kind of jumping around, reading a few different poems. And just before I get started here, I'd love to kind of gauge the room here. Would you all like me to share my screen so you can see the text, or would you prefer to just stare at my beautiful face? Any thoughts there? Two, just stare at my beautiful face? I saw Dave. Going once.
I love the way that you read your poems out loud. So
Okay.
Me too. I'm gonna pin you so you're big.
Okay. All right, then I'm just gonna go for it. I'm not gonna share the text. You can always check it out in the book itself. Just real quick, the Gastrolith is the first section of this book, and you haven't heard me rant about the book in a long time. The whole kind of theme of stones and physiology and the relationship between the two is kind of scattered throughout. And So I wanted to go ahead and, come on. Go ahead and start with the very first poem, which is called Thank God for My Esophagus. As this is the entryway into the book, I thought it would be fitting to start with the entry into the body. And so it goes a little bit like this. So, thank God for my esophagus, this bit of potted air, my snake. Oop, we got someone calling here. I'm just gonna go ahead and put this on silent. I don't know whose phone this is. I apologize. I'm gonna go ahead and start over here. What is going on? Sorry. 1 second.
You're good. Take your time.
It's extremely frustrating. I'm going to leave.
Don't do it, Dave. All right, let's try this again. Okay, so thank God for my esophagus, this bit of potted air, my snake, my face so full of itself. I chase its peristalsis like a frisbee forcing air, and yes, I'm told the best toys are those that call it quits in the esophagus. Thank God I'm all grown up. Thank God the rest is invested in stocks of bone. Thank God I will be broth one day, when I shall indeed be what I eat, and holy, holy, holy shall be the sound in my esophagus. Thank God for being something, for oozings and spare modes of breath. Thank God for anal breathing and all it's done for pigs, and thank God for all we've done to pig, sausage so fit for our esophagus. Thank God for the Heimlich, in flaps and fans, and our totally on brand in being human. Thank God for this epiglottis, even if it doesn't always close just right. Even if it loses the trachea on occasion. Thank God for its invasion. Thank God for all accessories, my upgrades and unfaded foppish curl. Thank God for its lacerations and its healing with gauze. Thank God for my never having a massage, its ease too opposed to nodding. Thank God for nodding. How flexible it makes the esophagus, and thank God for being a river, a fen, hard line against worrisome mists, but then again, thank God for all the worry, the road and profile. Thank God for being half a person in textbooks and charts, my dissection always another disagreement. It isn't too hard to imagine when you've got all this esophagus. Thank God for all of us. Thank God for there not being a God, especially one with an esophagus. Thank God for stretch, its odd moments measured in its flexion, its enchiridion of closed, conflustered space. Thank God for sounding hollow, median meat so dense around me I could never be well done. And thank God for doing well. I mean, we get away with it sometimes. Like a crank and its bucket. Thank God for clean water and this idol of cooling in the esophagus. Thank God for cooling and drooling out of mouths and palates, all awful auctions of the esophagus. Thank God for thinking in thirds, the worse less because of it. The worst cases being what they will, and power foaming over in thankful clots of the esophagus. Thank God for being thankful. Thank God it sounds like this, goes like swift kindle, flaking white and downy. There's nothing so brutal as change. Thank God for fame eating its own esophagus, for being as easy as it looks. And it is easy anyway. Sometimes I can even speak. And that's the first one. All right. Thank you and bearing with me in some of these technical issues. So I don't want to ramble for too long about all these little details about what all the elements of the Somatoliths means. I should note that the title Somatolith is sort of a invented term that is meant to kind of encapsulate both the literal and sort of metaphorical aspect of poetry and some of these techniques we use to process things in a squishy, fleshy body, both in terms of the physical and sort of the emotional. And so the first section is all about introduction, taking in, consuming media, consuming things to help you process as you go along. And so initially, the entire collection was kind of built around the Gastrolith, and I kind of expanded from there as well as I wrote more poems and did things a little differently. I think the next one I'm going to do is called Birthday Suit. It's going to introduce us to some of the more visceral themes, and it's also got a little rhyme, which if you've watched me perform before, it's always a fun little thing I like to add in. So this is called Birthday Suit. There's something rearranged in me. The heart of this, my artery, distracts the head, and if I sneeze, will squeeze out the parts I hardly need. Since when was I a blood collage, appeasement in this flesh garage, enmeshed in what is best for love, or lacking that, the lack thereof? No good the gut too flushed to churn, or eyes comprised of veiny burn. No good the hands, no good the feet, no good this abacus of meat. And I, the calculating grasp, deflated voice with faulty rasp that bears no sound and yet is heard in punctured passings of a word. And what a load of thing with all this pink. Gelatinized, but I stush, the rest is bronze and knows no squish. So there you go. Just a little rhymey flourish there for you. A lot of these poems I do want to again acknowledge were edited, reviewed, critiqued by a lot of my friends at the Charlottesville Poetry Critique Circle and the Writers Circle as well. They were my writing community back in Charlottesville, Virginia, and many of their members are here today. So again, thank you for all the feedback you've given me over the years. This one in particular was actually originally written as part of our April Poem a Day challenge that we sometimes run, where April's National Poetry Month, and we try to write a poem every day and share with each other and give each other prompts. And I don't recall what the prompt was for this one, but this is, I think, from our inaugural year of doing that. And it is called Yesterday I Realized I Was Following Someone and I Didn't Know Why. I should also note this comes from a period when I really made my titles excruciatingly long. I don't know why. So we see it in nature too. Army ants shoveling a death spiral in cement, the most hurried waiting to exist in invertebrates. But that's nothing before our own following of the asses right in front of us, like junky clockwork processing before a great black rock, or careless crumb in the case of ants, honoring that which they cannot seem to eat. And even now, it seems to me that all images destroy themselves in time. All right. So I think I might go ahead and skip ahead to, actually, you know what? I'm gonna do this one. I'm sorry. I had a reading order all laid out, and then eventually when I get in the moment, I'm always like, forget all that. I'm gonna just kind of add in my own things here. Changing things up a bit. So I think I'm gonna do this one. This is a fun one. This is a goofy one. Sort of. Takes a little bit of a darker turn. But this is called Eating Out. Again, very much in the themes of consumption, both literal and metaphorical. And it goes a little something like this. So, eating out. Yesterday, I was looking small, like limpin' leftovers in a St. Bernard's worth of doggy bag. My consumers wondering why they brought me home at all, thinking, we could have finished it there. We weren't that full. And I wonder what is worse, the creature that can fit you in its mouth entire, or the one that can't, but does so anyway, piece by patient piece. So that one's just a nice little short. I think we're gonna go ahead and maybe move on to the next section. Now, one of the things I always like to do in my books is I always like to have little interludes and other bits of writing in there that aren't strictly poems. I was debating if I wanted to read any of those today. And some of these I might. This one I might skip for now, but there is a little prose section that kind of bridges each section. As we move into what is called the Bufonite, there's sort of subtropes and motifs that start to appear in each section. And for whatever reason, I noticed that I was writing a lot about these Somatoliths and then also combining that with some reptilian and amphibian themes for whatever reason. And I think that's partly because I have a slight underlying fear of reptiles and amphibians that just kind of manifests for whatever reason. So some of these are really goofy, some of these are kind of a little bit more lighthearted. But I thought I'd go ahead and jump into this next section. The Bufonite, a Bufonite itself, is actually a legendary stone. It's not a real thing, but it's a legendary gemstone that was said to grow in the skulls of toads and frogs. And in medieval medicine, if you were to find one and cut open the frog's head, you'd find a little gemstone that would cure wounds and diseases and things like that. So really this whole section is about shortcuts as I perceive them in a sort of, again, literal and metaphorical sense. There's an air of mysticism to a lot of this. And so I thought I would actually start with Urolith, which is the scientific name for salamanders. So it goes like this. She who is emerging, shardless thing of footprints which towers at heights higher than, flexes accretion in feats primeval, wriggled free of loamy bed, mightier than willing, deadlier than done, her venom suppressed until all atoned moment tilted, then knowing swift partition, a three-legged scuttle, familiar limb gone, and with it the net of nerves, felt and feeling, illicit, spent, potential, like a salamander removed. All right. I see we have some other folks joining. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. Oh, I see Thomas and Tristan have joined us. Hey, guys. Thanks for coming along. I don't really have a great preface for this next poem. But it's probably my oldest that I've written that's still that I still include in a lot of my collections and readings and things like that. I think I wrote this when I was still an undergrad. It's called the Antediluvian, which is a big fancy word for something that came before the biblical flood. And it goes like this. So, I might smile a while, and while I'm smiling, change. I might age or add those well-adjusted shades, colors of a chameleon that defile an erstwhile edge. Do you know the ways we count our days, debates and disputations on the human subject? Did Noah, in his long life after the flood, drink far too well, take up the token nakedness? He did not deliberate death, but he did die deliberating. All right. And that's one I really like just because, I don't know, the ending really lands for me for whatever reason. All right. Let's see. This is another one that it tends to be a favorite at readings. It's another rhymey one. It's very short. This was originally published in the Artemis Journal, which is a local anthology put out every year here in Roanoke, Virginia. It's got a lot of fantastic writers from across the Commonwealth and a lot of artists as well. So this is one that's actually, I don't think I've ever told anyone this, but it's based off of a little rhyme ditty, I don't know, that Mr. Rogers read when he was giving his speech before Congress for, I guess, PBS. And I think it was, what would you do with the hate that you feel or the anger you feel? Something like that. And I kind of riffed with that, and this became the loiter you do. The loiter you do is the loiter you get. What remains when we've loitered so long? Is it spice from the fever, squall from the ether, talk like we've never been wrong? The loiter I have is the loiter I sold, the loiter which bought this whole town. And the gist is exactly the gist I remember the day the dark loitered on down. Through covens and bypass the still will remember, like silence which smothers in song. Then what will you do with the loiter you offer when the loiter gets loitered too long? I find myself reading that one to myself or just reciting it, probably more than any other of my poems. It just, I don't know, it's one of those quippier ones that kind of sticks in your head like an earworm. Let's see. I think my next one, and again, if anyone has any favorites of mine or from the collection that they know of that they would like me to read, go ahead and put them in the chat. I'd love to fulfill some requests. Otherwise, I'm gonna go based on my kind of semi-set list here. I think the next one I'm going to do is actually one of, I think, the darkest poems in this collection.
Oh no.
Censorship.
That's
Too
enough.
dark.
That's enough. Get out. No, I'm just kidding.
Does anybody have any embarrassing James stories?
Now's the time while he's not here.
We'll tell him he's not on. He's downstairs. We're upstairs.
I'm sure, Mom, you might have a great story for all of us.
Oh, no, I wouldn't dare.
This is being recorded.
Oh, really? Yeah, it is. So I have to be very.
What was his high school prom like?
He was homecoming king. How about that? So I guess it was pretty good.
That's good intel.
Yeah.
Very good
He
intel.
won't tell you that because he doesn't want people to know, but we have the crown in his bedroom from homecoming.
And here he is.
The king has returned.
He would never tell.
I'm here. I'm sorry. What happened? I'm on my work computer, and they will periodically just decide to update without asking you. So I canceled it, and it should be fine. I apologize again. Give me 1 second to reopen my text here. This is a good breather. How are we all doing today? We feeling good? Any great observations or comments to be made? Oh, admit.
It was kind of a free-for-all while you were gone. You're apparently the
Okay, that's what I want. I want a little. That's all good.
We got some good James intel.
Oh no! What good? Oh no! That makes me
Long live
nervous.
the king.
Oh God!
They asked me how your prom was, and I said you were homecoming king. So I
Wait.
gave him a
Oh
little
God!
info. I said, but you would deny it. He would never tell you that. So sorry.
Thanks, Mom. I should note I was made homecoming king only because I refused to go to homecoming. I like made that was my line in the sand for some reason, and I was like, it's not for me. And so not as a cruel joke, but maybe as a coercion nonetheless. They made me homecoming king.
Oh, because that's a power move. That's why they made you homecoming king.
It was I was awed by it. I was really not prepared for it.
They really wanted you to be there, so they all voted for you. So
oh, and it was still an awkward experience. All right, I'm back. I'm sorry about that. That's the struggles of working on your work computer. So anyway, I don't know what y'all heard, but I was just basically saying that this is for me one of the darkest poems. I wrote this actually when I was at a conference it was like a glaucoma research conference, and I was out in the garden watching this little puddle of little amphibians, various amphibians, tadpoles and the like. And did you ever have those moments where you just suddenly unlock like a core traumatic memory for no reason whatsoever, and you're like, oh, and I don't know, that was like a David Lynch moment for me, because I remembered what was for me a really weird, long traumatic experience in kindergarten that you'll hear about here. And this is called A Lonely Hotel Courtyard in the Middle of Atlanta. This pond is going green. And I don't mean in an ecological sense, or I do, but sometimes the figurative envy of water is tired code for an oxygen sap. Water struggles. Things die. I look on and am surprised to see tadpoles squiggle like fat little black spermatozoa poaching at ripples, nibbling, I think, at that liquid ruin. And I am reminded of the aquarium we used for a desperate period in kindergarten. Our tadpoles more like shiny whip-tailed olives, and the slow horror of the class as we processed, week by week, that these dappled creatures were not turning into frogs, but something long and lizard-like, less stoic mushroom caps bloated in the mud, more squirming, regenerative things that flattened their bellies daily, keening against the glass. And now I know why, with their water so green. Green, but not in the ecological sense, but also in the ecological sense when my teacher called my parents and told them I was distracted, wandering off to other classes. I didn't have the words at the time to tell them about the green water, the bare white bellies, the glass that was there, and the glass that wasn't. I was young. I was much too young. Sorry. So that one still kind of wigs me out a little bit. In case you couldn't tell from the narrative of that, we basically had like a tank. We were supposed to watch the transformation of tadpoles to frogs, but they didn't turn into frogs, they turned into salamanders. And to a 5-year-old's mind, that's a terrifying kind of switch out. I don't know about you, but salamanders are way freakier than frogs, and they would just constantly be scraping up against the glass trying to get out, which again, terrifying for a child. And it was only years later when I was, learning about biology that I understood why. Essentially, there was a process called eutrophication that was sapping all the oxygen from the water, so they couldn't breathe in there. And eventually, they all died. And I didn't want to be in the same room as that tank, so I was constantly avoiding it, and I would be like wandering out of class. And I briefly got in trouble for it, but anyway, that's the story behind that one. Let's see. So let's make it a little lighter here for a moment. Let's go ahead. I'm gonna skip on to the Regurgitalith. Now, for whatever reason, regurgitation, themes of emesis, that features prominently in a lot of my writings, and I like to attribute this to my friend Chandler. I think he also has an interest in emetic themes in a lot of his work, and I just kind of took that and ran with it. So he actually has helped me a lot with poems, particularly in this section. And I wanted to read this next one, Timeless Art of Regurgitation. I mean, of course, regurgitation in the sense of literal, but also figurative regurgitation of just repeating things back to people. When you're in a creative field or any kind of academic field, that tends to be a big part of it, is just kind of regurgitating. And after a while, you start to get a little self-conscious about that. And so this first one, Timeless Art, is based on a study that came out a few years ago that found that a lot of seabirds, like seagulls, will vomit as a defense mechanism, not to make themselves lighter so they can escape, which was the previous thought, but because they were literally offering an alternative to their predator, being like, I know I look tasty, but what if, blah, there you go. And I feel like I do that a lot in just terms of like offering unnecessary alternatives. So that's where this poem comes from. I'm sorry about your cardigan. I suppose my acid-added wrinkle couldn't be quelled. And maybe I've been cleaning my ears too much, but could you repeat yourself? Not because I don't believe you, for I've always believed in a thing like you. More so that you know for sure what to do with all this upcheck. Or should I be shutting up about now? Like a soldier, about face, and never bother you with tender questions again. Because the way I feel, north of this pylorus, caudal to this tongue, because if you said no, then this is an act of lightness, reaching or retreating like a vulture with its spew. In which case, would you hold my jacket as well? Would you repeat it to my beak while I run off to carry on like carrion, undistinguished in the road? And if yes, then I must be making sure, like a Coney Island gull, offering what I've eaten rather than face that soft consumption spooling in your teeth. Take these boardwalk curds instead of my piteous pounds. And if it doesn't suit you, answer again, and I'll come up with something better. It's my birthday, and there's cake down here somewhere. Yeah. So.
I like that one.
Thank you. I'm a big fan of that one as well. That's one of those like kind of ones that I'm always never sure if I want to break it out at readings, just because like especially like open mics, because you never know how will a crowd respond to a vomit themed poem. So, but it always I think it tends to surprise people. Let's see. There's a lot also in this section that I really like because I play around a lot more with form here. And so I can't really read those. They're not as interesting unless you can see them. So when you get the book, especially pay attention to the form in Regurgitalith. I think I wanted to do this one. This one's called Out of the Keys. It's based on a collection of different experiences kind of cobbled into one. But it goes something like this. A child was screaming on my flight. I was going home to attend a funeral for a pinball machine. So I gave the kid my Amazon Fire, hoping he'd like the way its little boxes scroll side-like, first slow and cold butter modem, then fast, like duck yolk cut over thawed bread. And he liked it so much that he smashed its glass with his nose. Now, you might be thinking that child is a dick, or that I'm a dick for giving a child something made of glass, but I'm here to tell you that we all have it coming. What with the way we scratch and hurt each other's laps, what with all the upstream havoc, and our habit of patting our pockets like woolly little aphids, waving at each other to slow down, stop, go back the way you came. Oh my. So, getting here to the end, we talked about maybe wrapping up around 3:40-ish, so I'm going to go ahead and read maybe 2 or 3 more. I know we're kind of coming up on that, maybe 2 more. And so I thought I would go ahead and go on to the Urolith. And this is really where we kind of come to the other end of my themes here. As far as stones and bodies, bodies and stones. A lot of this section was inspired by the events surrounding a surgery I had a couple years ago to remove a kidney stone. Again, not an experience most people I think would use to write a poetry collection, but it got me thinking about a lot of different things. And I thought I would definitely read Burn Me Out, which is one of my favorite performance pieces. And it's, well, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into it. I don't want to explain it too much. This one goes a little fast, so I'll try to keep it metered and slow. Burn me out. Lose me if you love me. Let the lantern hit the floor. Let the sparking of its falling spread its flames across the door. Fill the fallowness of focus, which comes blustered with a shriek from the hollow of a sinus where your heart has grown too weak. Take a lungful of my smoking, prickled light with cinders swirl. Burn me out of your sclera, harry all your hairs to curl. Let skin succumb to crackle, and let it caramelize the glaze of my sweet and simple sucker singeing quick within the blaze. Marvel at the swift succession of your hearth replacing home, turning thatch to ashen atrophy, then all to catacomb. All becoming thus untethered toward the warming snow of worth that coats the blackened drywall with the pungent palls of earth. And to say that I'm a fire is to only speak the facts, while to say the heart's a muscle is to say that it contracts and extends itself indefinite, impossible to contain, save all the awful falling waters intervening from the brain. I think we're more than our assurances, insured for incidentals, more than eerie little ecstasies sprung bright from elementals, so thank God for salt and ceremony. Thank hell for what retains. Every powdered heap between us, fallen from our white cremains, this Pyrrhic trance and prophecy which so benevolently becalms these anguished simulations of warmth between our palms. Because any meat of friction is anesthetic to the skin. A third-degree reminder which let the leaden linens thin, our shawls too charred apart from us in this rigor mortal braid, some tactful black reminder of concessions that we made. But of all the fats that made us, that have had their time to rend, so little's left to suggest they were not made to end. And yes, fire's a tired metaphor. I guess I've yet to learn. not every line that I've made rhyme was also made to burn. Thank you. Oh, all right. We're coming here to the end of the time. Karen, do you think we have time for one more, or should we?
Absolutely. Go for it.
Okay, let's do, I think we'll do one more. And I'm really tempted to do, I discard the image of my waking from anesthesia. I think if I had to pick a poem that kind of encapsulates the total themes of this work, as far as stones, physiology, self, altering states and movements, I think it's this poem. And part of that is because a big inspiration for this is sort of looking at this model of medieval cosmogony about how things have their intended place in the universe and in the body. And if things are moving or where they're not supposed to be, this is because they are in
Oh no.
We lost him.
He's gone again. He'll be back. I have a feeling.
We need more James facts.
I'm sure he will be back in a moment. In the meantime, get your questions ready because we will have a little Q&A. And there is a lot to comb through in such a small collection. I mean, there's a lot. And James and I had a few conversations about his work while we were going through the editing process, and it's just, I was just awed by the thought he put into these different pieces and some of the stories behind them. So I just love hearing all about it. I hope you do too.
Hello, folks. My name is not now Mary Cole. I had to readjust because
Did you turn her
despite my
yeah,
I'm there. Despite my my efforts to suppress the automatic updating processes within my computer, they have circumvented my own will and have gone behind my back to do this. So I'm here. At this point, it's 3:44. You know what? I'll leave you maybe in some degree of suspense with the final poem. And unless you really want me to, I can probably scrounge it up. But I figure we might as well. We're already at 15 till, so I think we should probably shift to the Q&A section if that's cool with y'all. So does that sound good to folks? I apologize again for all these technical errors, such as the way of Zoom, though.
A marketing ploy indeed.
Yes, it is. Haha. I just, what was that one movie? I think it was The Last Exorcist or something that's like, if you want to see the end of the movie, you got to go and buy our special premium, like something like that. All right. Yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and open it up to some questions. Are we, does that sound good to folks? Thank you for bearing with me. I apologize again for these issues.
So what was the first poem that got this collection started where you said, oh yeah, this is the theme?
Yeah, well, so it's one of those things, and this is actually something I've taught a class about, you know, how to like find themes in your poems and then use that to like build chapbooks or whatever. So it got started when I was teaching that class and I was trying to use my own work as an example, and I realized that I was doing a lot of physical stone combination type works. I would say though, I think the one that really set the entire book off was a book or a poem called Fossil, which is the concluding poem of the first section, Gastrolith. And so the initial version of this collection was just Gastrolith. It was just about this stone that I remembered from childhood when I was still obsessed with dinosaurs. If Tristan is still here, he'll know what I'm talking about there. Gastroliths are stones that certain animals will swallow, and that helps them with processing things. And at the time, I kind of considered that a really neat allegory for what poetry kind of does, where it is itself sometimes very dense and hard and inscrutable in the way that stones can be. And it might not be itself processable, but it helps you kind of process other things. And so I thought that was a really neat idea for a project. It combined my literary interests, with my scientific fascinations, and I just thought it would be a really great place to start. And then I just kind of kept adding stuff in. There's actually one of my favorite things in the book at the very end. You'll see is an appendix where I have a list of all the other chapters that I was considering adding and the ones that I've crossed out as far as like other stony somatolithic themes. So yeah, that was kind of the initial poem. Other questions?
So were all the poems related to, you said, the body?
Yeah, so my mother here asked the question.
And the
Yes.
kidney stone is
Yes.
one of the ones you read about.
So yeah, so the main, if like there's a lot of things going on in this book, obviously. But the main overarching theme is this idea of something that should not be in, or doesn't seem like it should belong in the body, being present in the body, either through intentional introduction, in the case of gastroliths, or from some other process such as Urolith. So yes, so it's all about things that seem incompatible and how one's really kind of working out through the other. And that was the basis of it. And again, I was also, when I was putting a lot of this together, I think at the time I was still teaching an anatomy class, and so it just kind of seemed inescapable at the time. So yeah.
How many poems are in this book?
How many poems are in this book? Oh gosh, can't remember off the top of my head. Approximately. Oh no. 50-ish, I want to say. I think it was like 50 to 52. Yeah.
Wow. And are there photos, or I didn't look at it yet? Pictures?
Nope. Just the cover.
You don't show all this
No.
crappy stuff.
No. No.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
50.
50. Thank you.
50.
I got there. You
go. Which poem would you say you spent the most time on, and which poem would you say you spent the least time?
That's a great one. I love that question. Because I'm not one that really, I think, labors over poems for too long. I either decide that I like it after some editing usually, or I just kind of give up on it. But there's been a few in this one where I changed my kind of my practices, and I think actually Fossil, so the one I mentioned before, probably took me the most time. I would say it has gone through maybe 4 or 5 different drafts. Again, with the help of some of the folks from the Poetry Critique Circle and Chandler McGraw, if he's still here. Both of them helped me a lot in getting that to where it is now. In terms of the one that I probably spent the least amount of time on, it would probably be, I didn't read this one, but it's called the Kakurpura, which was another one of those poems that I wrote for the Poem a Day challenge. And it's a really goofy little poem, but it's about a fictional creature. And I guess I was kind of tapping into my Shel Silverstein-esque influences, about a little creature that its only protection in the world is to basically explode, and has all these little spines after it's been consumed, thus killing itself and its predator. Because you see a lot of that in nature. And I was obsessed with the idea of genetics and evolution being driven by spite, not purely by survival, and because we see a lot of that anyways. And that one took me maybe 5 minutes, and I never changed it just because it was goofy and to the point. It's very short too, so that's a fun one. Yeah, thank you for the question. Any other questions? I'm trying to scan the cameras here to make sure if anyone else like raising their hand. Oh, Andy.
Yeah, I have a general question about kind of like your philosophy on pacing. I know you also write fiction. So does your philosophy on pacing a poem or a collection, even though it may not be a linear narrative, does that have any parallels to kind of your philosophy on pacing stories? Or like, how do you find yourself arranging your poems? Is it more subject matter themed? Is there like emotional highs and lows you try to hit?
Yeah, that I have a harder time personally pacing in poetry. And certainly the way I go about building a lot of these collections is I do think of it kind of chapter like a novel, because that's a style of writing that has really forced me to become more structuralist and oriented toward sort of the whole total anatomy of the collection. And so to that end, yeah, I always start by kind of grouping based on subject matter, I guess. And then from there, I try to arrange it based on like what seems to like give a thesis statement. I think about this almost in terms of like essay like structure. And then what to me honestly has like the best kind of punchline or final line of a poem, and I usually put that one at the very end of a section. And then I try to like I don't want to give people like 6 really dense ones in a row. I try to break it up and have like a short one, a goofy one. I try to vary it a lot. So and again, Chandler helps me a lot with some of those things. I think he has a really good idea about how works kind of flow into each other. He's a curator, so he has a good sense of how to do that. And so I've gotten a lot of feedback from that. I'm currently working on my next collection right now, and it's a little harder to organize, but I would say that I take kind of pacing notes from a lot of different things. I don't have a strict philosophy about it though. I think it's really just not trying to introduce too much of the same thing all at once, just because sometimes my work can be very dense, and so I don't want to have like cataracts in terms of like the overall flow. So that would be my overall theory on that. Thank you for your question. Other thoughts, questions, quips?
Got one. What's your next collection about?
Yay! All right. So I'm still working on the title. I've told a few people about this, I think, but a lot of the poems I've been writing the last 4 or 5 years were kind of like weirdly narrative. Like there was like an almost like started to like pop up with like goofy characters and such, almost Spoon River anthology like, but it was all based around like con artistry. And so there was one of my favorite kind of historical texts is a pamphlet from Elizabethan England called A Notable Discovery of Cousinage. And cousinage is this old-timey word for like charlatanism and like tricksters and cons and things like that, schemes, grifts. And it all kind of tells you about all the different terms and the parts and the players and the various examples of like ways that people get conned in London at this time period, and basically as a way of like to identify and prevent it. And this is going to be a little unflattering maybe to my art form, but I always thought of poetry as essentially a literary form of scheming and con artistry. Maybe that makes it sound a little more brutish and low than it actually is, but I think it tracks for me. And so the collection is based on lots of little like anecdotal poems of examples of poetry being a sort of like falsehood that is useful, I guess, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like that. It's a little Dickensian almost in terms of like how it conveys all these little ideas, and it's actually it's very much going to be influenced by Charlottesville. So also just some of the characters I've met. If anyone's been to Charlottesville and has walked on the downtown mall, it's filled with interesting, colorful characters. So some of the poems are going to be based on just interactions I've had with said characters. And so it's going to kind of go off of that. And also my guilt as a writer, as far as like it feels like, you're manipulating people into thinking and feeling things, which I guess is in a way sort of true. And I don't know. That's the basis of it though. So yes, Disco Dead. Yes, absolutely. That was one of my favorites. Disco Dead was a character I invented that appeared on Curvature, which was a site that Dave Sorensen and I were contributing on. And you can read, that's going to definitely appear in it. So if you want to read a sample of the upcoming work, you can follow that link there. Also, Midday Acquaintance, if anyone's read that poem of mine, that's also going to feature prominently. It was based off of a guy who I just met on the mall, and well, you can read about the experience. Great, thank you. Other questions? Going once, twice. Oh, I have another one here.
What's your favorite? Which one's your favorite in your book?
Ooh.
This last one. Do you have a favorite?
Do I have a favorite? I mean, I don't know. They're so varied in terms of style, and you know, mm, I think in terms of like the overall construction, like concept, delivery, feel, I would say Time of Start of Regurgitation is always one that I really enjoy. And it always seems to get, you know, good response. So I really enjoy that one. The one I was about to read, I think is probably one of my most dense in terms of message. I discard the image of my waking from anesthesia. And again, if you've been to Charlottesville, you'll recognize a lot of references within that. And then in terms of like sort of the rhymier ones, I think The Loiter You Do is probably my favorite, like one of my favorite rhyming ones, even though it's like one of my shortest as well. I don't know, that one just really works sonically for me. So, all right. Other thoughts, questions? We only got a few minutes left here.
So will most of the people be to see the live show on October 12th? Is that when it is?
Yeah, so
Remind them to come.
yeah, so I'm going to be doing, I guess if no one else had any questions, again, I'm just going to pause here. Any other questions?
I have one last question.
Oh, go for it, Dave.
Does Kithis the Salient make an appearance?
Yes, he does. So, gosh, that's so. Kithis is a pseudonym that I use sometimes. Who is sort of a trickster character who will be the main narrator for the next collection. He also appears in some of my fictional writings as sort of an auto-fictional stand-in, and was also a character I guess I played when I was still doing some of my open mic stuff down in Charlottesville, especially at never at Rapunzel's, but at Unoya, which was a really great open mic they had for a while. But yes, he will definitely be in it, and he's a fun alter ego, I guess. But yes, thank you. So I am going to be doing some in-person readings as well. So I wanted to just very quickly advertise those. I will be reading at New Dominion Bookshop in downtown Charlottesville on October 12th. I believe it's 7 p.m. So all my Virginia peeps will be able to see me there. I am also planning to do one in Morgantown itself, although I don't think anyone here is near there. But I will be reading at oh gosh, Monkey Wrench Books. The date is still TBD, but I'll be updating on that very shortly. And then I'm also going to be reading at the Poetry Lounge in Pittsburgh for all my Pittsburgh people. That one's probably going to be in late September. Again, I have to double check a few dates, or in early October. So I will let you know about those times as well. And yeah, that's, I think, all my current readings that are scheduled. So stay tuned for more. Any other questions, thoughts?
And how do we buy the book?
Oh, thank you. Yes. How do we buy the book? Well, you can purchase it from Gnashing Teeth Publishing's website. I know Karen posted the link earlier, and you can check that out there. Or you can go to their wonderful website, and it'll be in their book catalog. If you are going to be at the reading in Charlottesville, you can also order it there. They will be purchasing it from Ingram. Thank you, Karen. And if you ever see me, I will also have some copies, so you can always purchase it directly from me. And I don't know if is it going to be available oh yes, I'll be doing signings, of course. Karen, will it be available anywhere else?
It's available through the regular outlets, you know, the evil overlord Amazon. Being in online should have it soon, but get it through us. Support indie publishers. Get it straight from James. Support the author directly.
Right on. Yes. And as always, you know, I would appreciate reviews. If you've got, you know, any comments, if you're on Goodreads, usually I have a Goodreads account. Amazon, even if you don't buy it there. I appreciate all the positive feedback. And yeah, I think that's about all I've got. Thank you all for joining me once again. Thank you again to Karen for helping put this book out. Thanks to all the folks from Charlottesville who have helped me and various organizations there with the Poetry Critique Group, Writers Critique Group. Thank you to Dave once again for making my website, and also he's our co-editor at the Rumen if you want to go check out some of our publications there. Rumen.com. And thank you to everyone else who has joined and
Thank you,
listened to me read.
Andy, for opening us up.
Yes, thank you, Andy. Those were awesome. I'm so glad that you read the candle one. I almost requested it, but I didn't want to like.
I thought it fit the theme perfectly. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me. It was really a pleasure to listen to you read.
Yes, thank you. All right. Well, I will see you all hopefully in October. And thank you all once again.
Thank you everyone for coming out. If you missed any part of this, you can find this recording on YouTube a little later today.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Unmuted claps.
Unmuted claps. All right. I will catch you all later. Goodbye.